All right, let's talk a little bit of recruiting. So a huge weekend, or week really, and then what we assume will be a good weekend, another good week for the Seminoles, and then it'll slow down just a little bit, but then things should kind of keep going pretty heavy. I'll run through these, Richie, and then we'll kind of maybe talk about them overall, what we think about the class, and then we'll talk about some more. We'll run back down through some guys that we would not be surprised or have dates set and maybe committing somewhat soon. So last Monday, so almost a week ago, or if you're listening to this on Monday, Kevin Wynn, a 4-star defensive lineman, committed to you over Texas and UGA. Florida State was in a really good position here, but I don't think that it was like a sure thing that they were going to get him. Really some good confidence going into his official visit, which ended last Sunday, and you picked him up the very next day over, again, two playoff type caliber teams. Texas, who was in the playoff, UGA, who obviously you saw had a really good year last year as well. You pick him up, kid out of Georgia, so 4-star defensive lineman, really big pickup for Odell. Tuesday, this one came out of left field. Nobody expected this. CJ Wiley, a 4-star wide receiver. Everyone thought he was going to UGA. I think he was up over like 85% on the on-3 prediction machine. All the crystal balls were on UGA. None of our guys went to the commitment. None of our beat writers. Only UGA writers went. And, when he picked Florida State, when the shock, heard around the recruiting world happened, the Seminoles got a really, really talented 4-star wide receiver. I spoke with some folks that told me it could be the best wide receiver we've gotten out of the state of Georgia in a really, really long time. Absolutely nobody expected that. And shout out Mike Norvell for moving in absolute silence.
That's going to be a battle to the end, though.
Oh, for sure. I'll say the one thing that does help us is Georgia now has 4 wide receivers committed. They picked up 2 like the next 2 days. And so I hope they take like a couple more and they just don't have space. Just keep taking those wide receivers, Kirby. But it will be a battle. Hopefully they've learned, from the KJ situation. And, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Can't get fooled again, as W would say. So we won't get into debate talk here. But also a little bit out of left field, Myron Charles on Friday, a 4-star defensive lineman that it felt like Florida State led for a long, long time. Thursday, some predictions start rolling in for Texas to land the 4-star defensive lineman out of Florida. And Mike Norvell, the battle's in, Ingram Smith, they all shut that down. He commits over Texas, who was offering insane amounts of money. You'd have to think that Florida State had to get pretty close to it or at least up their bag offer for him to end up committing. Florida and Miami both really, really involved there as well. Texas probably your main competition, but Florida and Miami were pushing for the very talented 4-star defensive lineman. But the Noles got Myron Charles. Odell hits on his top 2 defensive line targets, something that I don't think we can say has happened for quite a while. Also, the defensive line recruiting right now with those 2, and then the number 1 edge rusher in the country in Javion Hilson, who shut his recruitment down. We complained a lot about defensive line recruiting, Richie, at both positions, end and interior, and it's hard to do a lot of complaining right now. And then yesterday, Florida State got a 4-star tight end when Chase Lofton committed over Texas A&M, Nebraska, and Missouri. You went head-to-head with a couple of Big 2 schools there, right? Big 2 conferences in being the SEC and the Big 10. Nebraska, the hometown team, kids from Omaha. Massive frame, 6'6", got the ability to put on some pretty good weight once he gets under Coach Storms. But you picked up a big, strong Midwest 6'6" tight end that you're really excited about, for the future. I don't think he's a day one guy when he gets to campus, but I do think he's going to make an impact. And you're taking him right after you pulled a low 5, high 4-star talent at tight end last year as well. And so I really like the pickups. And Richie, Mike Norvell has 8 commits right now. If you're listening to this on Monday morning, there's a really good chance that he now has 9 commits. We'll talk about who he may be picking up here on Sunday evening. But he's got 8 commits, Richie. All of them are blue chip prospects. Been a while since we could say that.
Yeah, and it's funny, Bud Elliott from Tomahawk Nation in the Nolecast, he puts out his blue chip ratio every year. People get upset, they get fired up, whatever it may be. But, Florida State is not in that pack right now. But he said he fully expects Florida State to be in that pack, at least a 50% plus blue chip ratio by the start of next season. And I think that's what Mike Norvell is doing. He's saying, listen, he's finally to a point where he can be selective and say, okay, I like you, but let's hold off a little bit. Oh, I really like you. You have the green light to commit. And that's a place that Florida State has not been in really since Jimbo left because, Willie had a great summer when he first got hired, but then the season happened, right?
Yeah.
And then Mike Norvell
Games got
came
played, as
in.
they say.
Yeah, games got played. And
Not a
then
good way for us.
no, and then Mike got hired. The product was absolute trash the first 2.5 full 2 years. Now players and coaches, and I think this is what's most important, high school coaches are seeing, no, Florida State is for real. I can now advise my players to go to Florida State. And that's something that if you are a high school coach and you truly care about these kids, you would be doing that kid a disservice if you said go to Florida State when they were 3-6 during COVID. If you said go to Florida State when they were 5-7 the next year after losing at home to Jacksonville State. But now you are at a point where if you're a high school coach and you truly care about these kids, you say, you look around, you look at in Miami, you look in Gainesville. Yeah, if you're going to stay in Florida, Tallahassee is where you need to go. And that is the point we have gotten to. And that is all because of Mike Norvell and shout out Michael Alford.
Yeah, the state of the program is in just such a different place, right? And Florida State is able to be, more aggressive. They can be more, like you said, more choosy,
Selective.
more picky,
Yeah.
and they're doing a really good job. And the fruits of their labor are going to show. They've put enough guys in the NFL. They've done a really good job of winning a lot of games. They've got a very competitive name, image, and likeness program with the Battle's End, and those are the things you need. They've now got stability at coaching, right? And like to seen recruiting finish a little bit better last year. There's no doubt about it. Nobody's going to sugarcoat that. It was a little disappointing to drop when you went 13-0, but it's trended up every single year. Some of these relationships are several years old, and so you weren't in it for some of these kids. Now these kids that you've been in it, while you've been good the whole time that you've had relationships with these kids. Like you look at Lofton. His freshman year you won 10 games, and so or his sophomore year, I'm sorry, you won 10 games. And then his junior year, you won 13 games. And so, you've had 3 years worth of relationships with these kids and you've been good for those 3 years now. And so, yeah, it's a lot more impressive. And then the next year, right, 2026, those kids, you're going to have won 10 games, 13 games, and then 10 plus games again this year. You're going to have won 35 games or so by the time they get to committing. I mean, that's a really good streak. And there was a stretch where we won 3 games and then 5 games the next year, and then Willie's last year you won 6. So you won 14 games total in 3 years. I mean, we nearly did that last year. So yeah, I think that you're just in a better spot. So speaking of better spot, Zay Thomas is going to pick tonight. He's a 4-star cornerback that I think Florida State feels really, really good about. Clemson's your main competition there. It'll be one of those two. And I think the Noles end up landing Zay Thomas. I was talking about this. And again, this may have already happened if you're listening on Monday morning. So I've mentioned this already. If you've listened on Monday morning, I've mentioned this in a video that aired on our YouTube. But I think when you think back about Clemson battles, we've not won a lot of head-to-head battles with Clemson on the field or on the trail, but specifically on the trail. And this is one that I think you're doing pretty well here. And you need to start winning more battles against Clemson because they've been, pretty elite. And they've been really, really impressive, even taking small classes. We make Dabo jokes about the portal and his staff and stuff, but they still recruit high school extremely well. And so winning head-to-heads there, a great step in the right direction. A couple of linebackers the next 2 days. Florida State trying to go 3 for 3 here in the next 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Although if you back it up some, they got to commit on Friday and Saturday, so it would be 5 for 5 if they could run this pretty impressive stretch. Zadrius Rainey-Sale is a linebacker out of Washington. Washington, UCLA are your competition there. Because he's from Spanaway, Washington, that's the only thing kind of giving me hesitation here. The only thing giving me pause. If distance truly isn't a factor, I think he picks the Noles. He's a 4-star linebacker. He's the number 1 player in the state of Washington, according to all 4 websites. Really impressive kid. We talked about D-line recruiting earlier. Well, now it's time to go to that second level of the defense and get the linebackers stocked up. We've talked about how the linebacker recruiting probably hasn't been good enough, in the very near past. They got a chance to really upgrade that here soon. Tavion Wallace on Tuesday. He's another 4-star linebacker, one of the best in the country. I think he's like a top 50-ish player on 3. UF, UGA, both very, very involved here. I think Florida State's your leader here, but I don't necessarily know that this is one that is all the way done, is, zero chance. I think that you're going to have to battle it out up through his announcement. I think it's on Tuesday afternoon, evening time frame, maybe 6:30, somewhere around there. That's a really big one too. If Florida State can go 3 for 3 on Zay Thomas, Rainey-Sale, and then Wallace, that is a massive 3-day haul defensively. Wednesday, nobody's scheduled. You could certainly see some surprises. Wouldn't be the first time. Second time, it would be the third time in the last week or so that you have some surprises coming out of Mike Norvell's recruiting class. But then Thursday, Peyton Joseph, 4-star interior offensive line, will decide between Florida State and Memphis. I feel the Noles are in a really good position there. If you had to ask me right now, Richie, which I know you're not, but I just listed 4 recruits: Peyton Joseph, Tavion Wallace, Zadrius Rainey-Sale, and Zay Thomas. If you set the over-under on 3.5 right now, Richie, which again, I know you're not asking, but I'm asking for you. If you set the over-under on 3.5 right now,
Over.
I'm leaning over. Yeah, I'm. If you set it at 2.5, I'd take the over and bet my mortgage on it. If you set it at 3.5, I think they go 4 for 4 here. So we'll see. I'm really confident in Thomas and Joseph. The linebackers are not a slam dunk for different reasons, but I do think that I lean both of them picking the Noles. I don't see a scenario where neither of them do. And Florida State does that. They'll be sitting in a position where 12 out of 12 recruits are blue chips, right? And that's kind of an unheard of blue chip ratio to start a class, right? Usually
Bama, Georgia. That's Bama, Georgia.
And Georgia's got a couple of 3-stars in their class. There's nothing wrong with 3 stars. We're not putting 3 stars down here today, but 12 for 12 is very, very hard to do. And eventually we will have a 3-star in this class, or, one of these sites will bump guys down because they've committed to FSU. But it's been pretty impressive to see. You've also got guys like Chroma and Byron Lewis and McCutcheon and others, that are going to be deciding likely in July as well. So maybe one of those pop on Wednesday so that we don't have an empty day in there where everybody's sitting around twiddling their thumbs. But those are the guys we know about with dates. If anything else happens, obviously stay locked into the channel and we will we'll talk about it there. But Richie, a fun time in recruiting world.
Absolutely, man. And I'm one of those fans that where, I love to follow recruiting, especially when you get a big player like a 5-star, high 4-star, but I don't really start paying attention until July. But man, I feel like I need to start paying attention right now because there is so much activity going on. And to your point, everyone that Mike is accepting is a coveted player nationally. Like, it's not just a guy that's deciding between, Florida State and UCF or some middle tier school like that. Like, no, these guys, everyone that is committed to Florida State right now could probably commit to almost any school in the country if they wanted to today. And that is the place we are in. Let's just ride this wave this summer. I love where we are right now, TJ. Yeah,
I do too. And I think we're going to continue to pick up steam. I think we pick up another 5-star offensive lineman in August. I think we're trending for some really good things. And so, yeah, I think the class probably ends around 8 to 13. I don't think it's going to be a super big class, maybe around 20 kids. If the average right now is like up over 93, which is the best in the country, if we finish with a top 5 average in a number 9 class because we only take 20 kids, I'm okay with that, right? Like I'm not going to be sweating that a ton
because we know we're going to kill the portal. Like
yeah, I mean
we
that,
just
and
know
that's what
that.
I talked with somebody about that just the other day. Here's my take on Florida State, and I've shared this I think before on the channel, but I think it bears repeating, and is probably just always a good ever present reminder. I think Florida State is going to recruit at about a top 8 to 13, 14 level pretty
High
consistently.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, high school only. I don't think they're going to take massive classes. When I spoke with Mike Norvell in Tampa a few weeks ago, he talked about the fact that unintentionally, the last 2 years, the roster makeup has been 65-35, high school to portal, right? And he said we weren't trying for that. That's just how it seemed to work out. And he said, he said, I can't tell you that that's what we're going to do every year, but it seems like that's what we have done a couple of years, and it will probably be around that, right? So you're talking 2/3 to a third. Okay, makes sense. The best thing that Florida State has done is they've gotten portal guys that you get multiple years out of, right? You got Jalen Brown, who didn't even play a snap for LSU. Well, you play him 4 years if you need to, right? And so, for example, right, like that's kind of the ideal way to do it. Jared Verse, Johnny Wilson, Trey Benson, obviously Jordan was here for a long time out of the portal. So if you can get more than just, and you'll always take the Keon Coleman's, you'll always take the Jermaine Johnsons, but if you can get guys that play multiple years, then it's essentially like a high school recruit anyway, because most high school recruits don't play their freshman year, and so they just play sophomore, junior, and then they go to the NFL if they're any good. Well, if you just let somebody else have that freshman year and then you get them, what's the difference, right? So I think that Florida State is always going to recruit like 8 to 14, 8 to I don't ever see them being above top 5 consistently. I don't ever see them being below 15 consistently. I think it'll be in that range. I think they're going to always have a top 5 portal class, and then I think they're going to develop their roster better than most teams out there. And I'm not going to say they're better than Georgia's development or better than Ohio State's development, but I think they're a top 5 program in developing. And if you do those 3 things, top 10-ish recruiting, top 5 portal, and you're top 5 or so in development, and you've got a good culture, you're going to have a top 5 or 6 roster in college football. I don't think your roster is going to be at UGA's level. I don't think it's going to be at Ohio State level, maybe not Alabama level. But then I think you're competing with everybody else. I think you're competing with Texas and Oregon and everyone else, right? And that's all you need to do.
You give yourself a chance to win the national title. Like, and it comes to, I think about the NCAA tournament every year with basketball, right? You have to give yourself enough shots to get there to win it. And that's, I can't believe I'm going there, but I'm going to go here right now. That 2020 Florida State basketball team was the best team. They would have won the national title that year. But again, it was Hamilton giving Florida State enough shots. Like, okay, we're back. I remember beating Notre Dame in Chicago to get to the Sweet 16. But you just give yourself enough chances, and you might just be able to do it. And I think that's what Mike Norvell has right now. And especially with a 12-team playoff, I think Florida State might be looking at a bye, honestly, this year. And we'll talk. We have all summer to talk about that. But, man, that's where we're at right now. That's where we are at, TJ, and I cannot wait.
All right, Richie, before we go on, I do want to give some love to Garnet and Gold. Listen, if you're in Tallahassee, you already know that you go to Garnet and Gold. If you need any FSU apparel, it is the #1 place to go and shop for FSU gear, clothing, gifts, merchandise, anything you're looking for. However, if you're online, go to garnetandgold.com. And if you're not in the Tallahassee area, I know you're online because you're listening to this, but if you're not in the Tallahassee area, go online, garnetandgold.com. Use the code NOSLAW, NOSLAW. You get 15% off of your order. If you order $75 or more, you get free shipping. Shipping in the state of Florida is like a day or 2. It's usually really, really quick. I never pay for the expedited because you don't need to. They get it out to you super fast. There's a holiday this week. If you order on a Wednesday, give them some grace. But go to garnetandgold.com and make sure that you're supporting the best Tallahassee retailer of all things Noles apparel. So we talked a little bit about the Zay Thomas recruitment. If you're watching this on Monday morning, we talked about Zay Thomas last night. You can click the link on the screen right now to go ahead and check that out.